Hey, pickleballers, and welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast. As always, thank you for your likes, comments, subscriptions. Please share the podcast around and use code PickleBros at checkout with Carbon Pickleball for 10% off. Today, we're going back to the well, where we got our first start. We've avoided this topic for a while, but it's coming back. We will be discussing DUPR today. Now, illnesses have some of us. That guy Stolp. So he'll be on mute for a little bit, but he will be contributing as strongly as he ever does.
The show must go on. The show must go on.
The show must always go on. But before we get into the topic, we have a recap to go through. Jesse and Tim, you guys had an event this last weekend that ties in nicely to the last video we did on Sunday. Team events are all the rage, apparently, right now. So, Tim, why don't you start off your guys' recap from the event you guys just did?
Well, I'm really curious to hear Jesse's recap because it was his first event like this. But so our team event had 8 teams. We talked all about that one a few weeks ago. This one had 20 teams. And it was up in the Aurora area, and so we figured there'd be a bunch of people that we hadn't played with before and didn't know, and that was absolutely the case. But we did bring a pretty strong contingent of players down from the Colorado Springs area, and it was fun to see those guys up there. And so we were kind of rooting each other on in that regard. All the matches were rally scoring, first of all, which was different. A bunch of the teams from this area practiced that in the weeks leading up to it, and got pretty comfortable with that format. But I believe it was a pretty random draw. It wasn't based on seeding or ratings of the players. And spoiler alert, we won. We got gold. Our toughest match was against Jesse's team. It went all the way to they weren't calling it a dream breaker. They were calling it like super singles. And we had to declare our lineup first. So Jesse put his wife against me, and this was actually sneaky effective because I felt it was so funny playing against Michelle, because in the middle of the point, she would look over to Jess and be like, "What do I do?" in the middle of the point while the rally was going on. And then like everybody's watching, and this was already a super riotous match where everybody was getting into it. There was lots of noise being made from the sidelines and from the players themselves. So with me against Michelle, it was like, all right, I felt a ton of pressure. First of all, obviously I had to win all 4 of the points that I played against her, or all 8, I guess, ended up being. I did not. I was so nervous with every swing of the paddle because I knew that I had to win all 4. I mean, normal circumstances, I would have won all 4, but with the pressure on like that, I did not win all 4.
Did she end up getting some off you because of rally, or just did she end up any clear winners?
No, I just hit the ball out twice.
It was a fun event. So originally when we signed up, there were like skill divisions. There was 3-5, 4-0, and 4-5. And I signed up for 4-0, so I didn't think I'd be playing you, Tim. And the reason I signed up for 4-0 is because I thought that my wife, Michelle, would be in over her head at 4-5. So
not the case.
Not the case. So we ended up playing, just everybody was merged into a single bracket. And on our team, the women, they were fantastic. They won like almost everything. And it was the men's. It was me and my partner that didn't deliver the goods. So that was pretty ironic. And then in the singles match, I think Michelle was by far, the player that exceeded expectations the most. So that was pretty ironic. But we had a great time. We loved playing you guys. We loved the singles match was very thrilling. And it was close. I think we lost 20-22. So we were right in there. And it was beautiful weather. I like that dynamic of like your teammates out there supporting you. And yeah, it was really a fun event.
That's awesome. And Jesse, you said the ladies outperformed your men's side on your team. I know that you were partnered with fan of the show Brett Lane, so we got to give him a shout out for failing because we know you carried him, right?
No, Brett was fine. It was my game that was the problem. It was a little tough. We had a bye, and then we came in and we played Tim's team. The ultimate gold medal winner. Sort of that's not really the way you want to start. But I will say this format rewards people that can play all three games in pickleball. You got to be able to play men's, you got to play mixed, and you got to be able to play singles. And if you're weak at one of those, it's a problem. For me, singles is my weakest. I'm probably, I don't know, maybe a 3-5. I just haven't played a lot of singles, so that's pretty challenging for me. I think it's like the triathlon of pickleball. You got to be able to do it all.
All right, well,
Can you go over the format just for people listening as to this team experience, and especially as we're going to lean into the draft recap, or maybe talk about that for a second. But just talk to us about what the format is for this team setting, and give people an understanding of that.
Yeah. So the way it worked was we would play the gender doubles games. It's a team of 4, so it's 2 men and 2 women, and then. So, like me and Brett, the men on our team, would play 2 men on the other team. And meanwhile, 2 women would play 2 women on the other team. So you have those 2 games going. And then you have mixed. And there's 2 games of mixed, which we generally played concurrently, but sometimes it's sequential. And so if you win all 4 games, then you win the match. In fact, if you win 3 games, you win the match. If you win 2 games, if it's 2-2, it's a tie. Then it goes to a tiebreaker, which is called, in the MLP they call it a dream breaker, but at this one they called it super singles. And whoever wins that wins the match. So, yeah, that's the format.
And is it rally scoring, you said?
Yeah, all the way through rally scoring. So you're on the same side of the court the whole time, which is definitely
I've never
pretty
done it
interesting.
this way. I've heard of this. I've never done it, though, what you're talking about.
Oh, rally scoring?
Particularly where you stay on your side, right? And even if you it's your serve and you score, you just hand the ball to your partner. Like I haven't played that way.
I mean, you can. There are some circumstances where you can switch sides, like after a timeout, for example, and you can also stack if you want to. But generally, people just stay on their side of the court.
What is it for stacking in that way? Then I guess. I'm confused by it, which is what to say I haven't played it.
Yeah,
if you want to be a left side alpha, you're going to be on the left side the entire time without even trying. Okay. So whenever it's an odd score, you're going to be serving. Well, now I'm confusing myself. But if you're on the left side, you're going to stay on the left side until, like Jesse said, you call a timeout or you switch sides.
Right. So I think if you're let's say you're a lefty playing with a righty, and you can position yourselves with your forehands in the middle if that's what you want to do, and you don't have to switch ever in the entire game, which is
guys like Stolp nice. Would love that because he can't keep.
Yeah, I could live on the left, and then
you'll like
good.
Yeah, can't keep track of the score. One thing I wanted to say though, Jesse. First of all, you're not a 3-5 singles player, okay? Like, I might be willing to give you weak 4-0, but you're actually more like an average 4-0. Your serve is excellent. Your return is excellent. I mean, you're not slow either. Like, I call you old, slow, and bald is the thing that you perpetually keep it. By the way, I called you that one time. And now it's like stuck forever.
One's enough.
You're not that slow, dude. Like, you and I played. We've done it twice now. You and I played singles, and I've beaten you 11-8 both times. And I thought I was going to beat you by much bigger margins than that.
Well, thank you. I am still bald and old, though.
Right, but the point about you have to be good at everything, or how good are you at everything, right? Like singles, doubles, and mixed. We noticed there are some guys in our ecosystem as we play these team events who either we give more nods to because they can do everything at a high level, or maybe they're just excellent at this one thing or 2 versions of the game, and another, like perhaps mixed, they stumble a little bit, or maybe aren't quite as dominant as in men's doubles and singles. So it's really interesting when you begin evaluating players from all three styles of the game, if you will. It's really fascinating to me. The awesome recap, guys. We have our team event on November 18th. We just did our draft for that. That's our video, that most recent one. We went live and did that. So this is just getting me even more and more excited for it. We're going to head into our beefs, gentlemen. I'm going to put the sicko up first. Stoll, what's your beef?
It's going to be a little less energetic than usual, but my beef is honestly with my freaking self. I got a beef with myself. I watched our episode last week on speed ups, and a commenter said something like, "You're an idiot if you speed up anything off of the bounce." And I found myself, doing speed ups off the bounce. And so I'm like, what loser would do that? And it turns out I'm the loser. It's me. I'm the problem. So my beef is with myself, and my beef is with people who speed up now off of the bounce. I'm only going to speed up in the air. So that's my beef.
That's actually pretty good. Yeah, I saw that comment come through. Apparently James Ignatowicz has stated publicly that the pros really only speed up off a volley. There's too much time on a bounce. And so I was thinking of it from a beta perspective. If it bounces, then you have time to sit back and wait for a counter. Guys are probably going to dink bounce balls to you. It's the volley attacks that you have to be more aware of. So it's just from the alpha beta dynamic, thinking of speed ups from a volley or bouncing perspective is interesting. Tim, what's your beef?
All right. Well, you guys are making me think longer and harder about my beefs after the train wreck of last time, which wasn't even my beef, if I can remind you guys. It wasn't even my beef. It just spiraled out of control because you guys are just jerks. But I don't think it. All right. So this one we were talking about. We already got into a little bit of line call discussion as we were recapping the team event. Well, there was another line call that occurred in the semifinals. It was a really close match. We were playing men's doubles, and the other team's women were on the sidelines watching, and they had a close look at a line call that I made. And full disclosure, I like to think that I'm pretty fair with my line calls. I give the benefit of the doubt. And I also sort of expect to be given a benefit of the doubt on the other end. But if not, I don't know. In this case, though, I mean, it was a close call. It was definitely close. I saw it out. And the lady behind me with her little entourage over there says, that was in. And it's a little bit different from, say, if we were just playing straight up doubles and there's an onlooker and you could hear some chatter in the background. She actually played on this team. So it kind of added a little bit of stress and drama, the fact that she was being so outspoken about this. And we kind of carried on. I took exception to her interjecting when it was my call. It kind of went on for a couple of minutes, and I looked around, and everyone was kind of looking over at us at our court from the other matches in the other courts, because I guess we were raising kind of a commotion. And I felt really bad about it. And after the match was over, I talked to one of the guys I was playing, and we just had a good conversation about it. Good dude, had a really good talk about it. But it made me think about line calls, and I think we've had this beef before, actually, but I don't think it's settled. I really think that we need some etiquette. What is the proper way to respond to a line call that you disagree with? I don't think there's any shared etiquette there in pickleball. And Ian, we actually had, just really quick. We actually had our own instance of a line call that we thought was incorrect, and we took exception with. It was actually 3 of them. And we kind of got all uppity with the guy. And now what we did, we didn't carry on and on about it. We just upped our level of play because we played pissed from that point on, and it worked. We won. I think that's the way to go about this, but it just kind of left me with a sour taste in my mouth after the team event. I did not talk to the lady again. I passed her several times, just walking around the courts, and it was icy. And it was kind of unfortunate because it really detracted from the spirit of the day. So I guess that's my beef is how do we figure out line calls moving forward? What's the best way to treat a line call that you think is unfair? And how do you get over it and just move on?
Stope, what were you going to add?
Yeah, I was going to jump in because I thought Tim was asking a question with etiquette. And Jesse will do something. He'll say, "Are you sure?" Like, we'll call it out. And then Jesse will be like, "Are you sure?" And then I'd be like, nope, I'm not sure, actually. and then I'll defer to my partner, and then we'll talk about it and then make a decision. But that's I like that. I like that format of, okay, out call that's questionable. The partner saying, "Are you sure?" Back to the person who called the out ball. I don't know. It maybe less icy.
It's funny that you say that really quick because that was actually the beef that I had before when I brought up line calls. Is someone saying, "Are you sure?"
He's
He's
talking about his own partner saying it to him.
Oh, really? So the other
so
team.
If he makes a call and I'm not quite sure if I agree with that call, I might say, "Are you sure?" And if he's like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely sure," then I'm like, "Great." But if he's like, "I don't actually, maybe I'm not so sure," then we would change the call and give it to our opponents.
Well,
Yep, Jesse's done that to me a couple
Tim,
times.
what you mentioned is like when your opponents ask, "Are you sure?" My response I give every time now is as sure as I can be, because that's the honest truth. And what you mentioned, we just had a DUPR match where you and I got a little feisty, not argumentative, but it definitely put a fire under us. Is there was one call that I thought was bad, but I'm always good, always to give someone one bad call, at least what I think is bad, because it is difficult out there sometimes. The ball's moving fast, you're turning your head. I know that I do the same thing, and I would like to be given the same, grace in terms of line calls. But then we had a second one shortly after that I thought was much less controversial. And then we had a third one shortly after that that was even less controversial. And so all of those stacked up together, I didn't argue, but I was very clearly upset about it. And you and I went on an absolute tear. We scored 30-9 points in the subsequent next two games because we lost that first game. Then we outscored them 30-9 in the next two. So, yeah, it definitely line calls, man. They'll never get old. And I know you guys don't pay attention to the pros, but it's definitely a topic of conversation over there. Just how bad line calls are at the pro level. Jesse, what's your beef?
Okay, so when I was playing against Tim and his partner Mick, I don't know if you remember this, Tim, but there was a ball that you guys, either it was a lob or you popped it up real high, but it was shallow, and it was like coming right to me. Do you remember this? And I let it bounce.
I don't remember actually.
You don't remember it? Okay, so
Tim doesn't pop up balls.
Well, I don't even remember who hit it, but this ball was right there in my wheelhouse, and then what happened was the sun was in my eyes, and I totally lost the ball. So my question for you guys is, what do you think I said after that happened? What did I say?
After the point was over?
Yeah.
I lost the ball, like to your partner, just saying I lost the ball. That's what I say.
Couldn't see it.
So I said nothing. Okay. I may have quietly said something to Brett, but my beef is with people who make a big show of pointing out, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see that ball at all. I mean, it was just total blackness. I couldn't see a thing." And the reason, it seems obvious, but you don't want to convey information to your opponents about how strong that sun is in your eyes. So, I mean, I thought it was obvious that I lost the ball, but maybe not. Like, Tim doesn't even remember it. Maybe it didn't really occur to them that I had lost the ball. So it's just best to keep information like that to yourself.
Jesse, you're just that bad that we never know whether you're playing indoors or not. We think you look at the sun anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
I just figured it was one of your classic whiffs. Happens at
I didn't swing. I waited for it to bounce, and then I was like literally blind, and I did manage to get the ball over the net, which I was happy.
Oh, Jesse, next time you hit a ball in the net indoors, I'll say, was the sun in your eyes? All right, guys. I have been so angry about this beef, and I'm getting personal, but not with any of you three. It's with my buddy Scott Fisher. I got permission to say his name, call him out for his absolute insanity. He and I were having a conversation over text after he watched the podcast, one of the podcast episodes. And his basic position is he wants pickleball to be more like tennis.
Ooh.
And he was adamant, Tim, that you were going to come to the defense of tennis as I go on this beef. I told him not to count on it. What do you think? Do you think you're going to be defending tennis here or denigrating it?
I'm certainly intrigued about what Scott is suggesting.
And I had to
I'm not
take-
going to promise anything.
Yeah, I had to take notes because it's so much absurdity. The first thing is he said, no one cares about a 20 or 30-minute game to 11, best 3 out of 11. He's like, no one cares about that. Tennis has 5-hour matches and provides real tension, real suspense, and pickleball just allows for flashes in the pan of streaky play. Anyone can get a game in 30 minutes, but it's the 5-hour contests that are truly good. So he wants pickleball to be scored games to 7 points, not 11, win by 2. He wants it to be the first to 6 games, and then this I don't know tennis as well, but he was saying you have to like first to 6 games, but if you were
Right,
tied,
that would be a set in tennis.
a set. So it's like you win the match with 7-5, or if you get to 6-6, have a what would that be, a 13th game to 15 rally scoring. So he wants a pickleball game to go to monstrous lengths. He says pickleball rules are just based on a combination of table tennis with a little tennis thrown in and a kitchen as a big asterisk in pickleball because he says, it doesn't allow real athletes to get to the net, and it softens up the game.
Scott he had such a good thing going, and then he brought up the kitchen being a bad thing.
Yeah. He asserts that making pickleball more like tennis would increase pickleball's adoption. Scott, I got news for you. It's the 3rd most participated sport activity in the country, cycling and running, then pickleball. So it's got no adoption problem. So the flashes in the pans comment I take offense to because look at the Johns brothers. They've been winning everything for the last 2 years. Annalie and Ben have been winning everything for the last 2 years. Pickleball doesn't allow for flashes in the pan. By the way, those games go for an hour long. Maybe our amateur games are 20, 30 minutes. Those games are over an hour long. Nobody wants a 3-week tournament. It's not Pickleball is not a mosh posh compilation of random racket sports. It's its own unique, beautiful piece of heaven, and it's the fastest growing sport in the world right now. So Scott, I think you're dumb. I told you I think you're dumb. I think your take is awful. Pickleball is not tennis, and people transitioning over who want to make pickleball more like tennis infuriate me. So anyway, that's my beef. So respond to it as you will.
Well, can we get a fact check on this claim that pickleball is the 3rd most participated sport in the country?
They
Bigger
did it.
than soccer, baseball, football, basketball. I find it a little hard to believe.
As Mark Twain says, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So there's all kinds of ways to measure things, but 38.5 million Americans through July of this year had played pickleball, which was more than the number of soccer players, football players, basketball players. Only cycling and running had more participants. Now, if they're counting just stepping on the court one time and you're a participant, I don't know that number. I'm just knowing that I saw this official report that backs up my presumptions. So obviously it is truer than fact.
Yep, I believe that. What a great way to get an adoption process in place for pickleball than making games 5 hours long. Like that seems like a genius idea. You know all the husbands out there that like to play golf, but they can't get away to play 18 holes because it's 3.5 hours long, or whatever. It's like, yeah, let's take this beautiful sport of pickleball where you can get games in, multiple games in under an hour, and make it 5 hours long. That is a horrible take. This guy, I'm not on board with that.
Hey guys, what happened to Stolp's arm? Do you see the video? Oh, there it is.
No.
It
What
looked like
else
it
are
was
you
cut
donating?
off.
It was a complication from the liver surgery.
Jeez. They really
Yeah,
missed
he's-
the incision area, didn't they?
Stolp, you're all kinds of special today. You have no arm. Your video's lagging. You're sick. It's okay. We'll keep you around. We still love you.
Thank you.
So I want to respond to the Scott thing. There's no way that making our sport more like tennis is going to help anything. However, I will say this. I find tennis to be way more watchable than pickleball. For whatever reason. I don't think it's because of the length of the matches, like Stolp was saying. That doesn't really help. But I do think that the best 3 out of 5 format, which I think they do on the PPA, right?
They do.
That's already in place.
Yep.
It's either best out of 2 or best out of 3. Or
Singles
best out of
is
5, best out of 3.
Singles is done out of 3. Mixed men's and women's doubles are all best out of 5.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with watching tennis, in my opinion. I mean, you guys might disagree. It has a lot to do with the personalities involved, too. Like, I loved watching Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi. I'm not really as drawn to the stars in pickleball as I was in tennis. That probably has something to do with it. I'm not really sure what the explanation is. I just find that the pros are not watchable in pickleball. So
Okay.
maybe it's because of the scoring. I don't know, but it's not because of the kitchen.
In track and field, the marquee event is the 100 meters, which is the shortest event. It's over in about 9.8 seconds.
If they're fast.
Yeah, nobody sits and watches like the whole, except me. Nobody will watch the whole marathon 2 hours long.
Yeah, that's
Except
crazy. Yeah. Your nerdy track and field cross country affinity is great, Jesse. You message us, you're like, the marathon record was just broken, and we're like your excitement for it is awesome. So I guess Scott did have a semblance of a defense from you, Tim, so perhaps he was correct about that. I still just, when he was texting me and we're having that conversation, I was like ready to punch a hole in the wall. I was like, stop making my game like tennis. But it's all right. All right, guys, we're going to get into the topic. DUPR. We're going back to the well. Now,
Yes, homecoming.
the homecoming. Tim loves talking about DUPR, raging about DUPR, and more likely is what it normally is. Now, I want to preface these comments by saying we are genuinely not going after particular players who might listen to this podcast in our ecosystem. We did have some players make decisions based on our team event that sparked this conversation, that created some interesting discussions. We're not coming at anyone. It's not personal targeting. So if any of these guys hear this, it's not supposed to be taken personal. It's literally an interesting conversation based on decisions in our ecosystem that we want to now talk about on the podcast. And so our draft, this men's event, is what caused these ideas to come up. And that is dodging DUPR. Why do people dodge playing DUPR matches? Who would like to take the lead on this? I already know that my opinion is probably more divergent than the rest of you. So Tim, why don't you go ahead? Why do people dodge DUPR?
I was going to give Stolp the nod here so he can get his speaking part over with and go back
Oh,
to
that's true.
relaxing
Yeah,
mode.
let's go to the man Stolp.
No, that's not how it works. I'm going to speak when I want to speak, so don't worry about that. I don't care if I'm sick. I don't care if my video's lagging. I don't care about anything. I say what I want to say when I say it, when I want to say it. All right. And what I want to say is I defend those guys. I mean, people who have high DUPRs. Okay, let's just go. Can we do a quick DUPR check and put it on our numbers again?
That's
if we're
great.
talking about
Let's
DUPR?
do it.
Oh, this is old school.
Yeah,
I have
this is going old.
All right, I have a 4.71. So whoever can.
You want me to
modify
put that really seriously?
Yes, I do. Of course I do.
4.71?
Yep, 4.71. Go ahead. Let's just quickly rattle them off. Tim, what are you?
I'm a 4.89 as of this morning.
I got mine in there. I'm a 4.58.
And Jesse?
What's mine? I actually don't know for sure. I think it's 4.66.
We'll just call it 4.66.
Okay.
All right. Now I want you all to put yourselves in the shoes of a 5.0 plus player. How hard does it take, or how hard is it to get a 5.0 plus rating? It's extremely difficult. And then and if you play down just a little bit and you lose that quicker than you gained it. So people, if we're having conversations of why DUPR matters and do I understand why people defend it, I would say yes, because it is incredibly hard. And if we were in those shoes, I promise you we would be thinking different. So that's how I'm going to kick this thing off.
Okay. Tim, I want to come back to you.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Stolt. Is there a particular rating that you think warrants some defense and consideration and sympathy? Like, hey, let's not challenge that guy because he worked hard for that blank. What is that number?
That's a good
5.
question.
5.
So it's 5. Okay, so if there's a 4.6 player that worked really hard to get to 4.6, and there's a 4.3 guy who wants some of his DUPR, should you respect the 4.6 guy?
It's too confusing for my sick brain.
Should you respect the 4.6 guy and not challenge him because he worked his tail off getting all the way up to 4.6? He started as like a 3.2, and it took him a year and a half. He's battled and endured, and blood, sweat, and tears, and now he's a 4.6.
If I'm a 3.5, it depends on my rating. If I'm a 3.5, I'm not going to go to that 4.6 and say I can play you. I respect the work you put in to get there.
Yeah, but that's a huge gap.
Well, that's what I'm
what
doing.
What if you're a 4.3 and you want to challenge the 4.6?
Should
you feel guilty about that?
Right, no.
We have 5.3s who decided not to play in our tournament because I am dangerous to them all the way at 4.58. Like, it's the same, just tiered it down. It's not. It's what number is safe? I think it's a great question, Tim. Or what gap warrants the consideration that it's okay to dodge? So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to say there is no number. I'm not calling DUPR Dodgers cowards, irrational, anything like that. I'm just saying I don't default that way. I don't particularly like it. Jesse does think I'm calling them cowards. Okay, maybe when I was angry when I'm trying to set up a tournament, I used that word. But I've had time to reflect on it, okay? Here's the thing. DUPR isn't that serious. And I don't mean people don't take it seriously. I think we all can agree in terms of objectivity, in terms of reliability as a metric, it is not ideal. I don't think I'm a 4.58. I don't think that Craig Duncan, who we've brought up before, is a 4.22. Some guys can have true ratings, but you can also be overinflated and underinflated. So when you're dealing with a broken metric, I mean, you might as well just say, well, I have a yellow star badge, and Tim has purple clouds, and Stolp has blue shoes. And we can call our rating. We might as well just call it randomness, because to me, DUPR doesn't mean anything because it's broken. The algorithm is constantly changing. The numbers, it takes 3 months to climb up to a 5.0 in a single 20-minute match to lose nearly 0.1, a full tenth of a DUPR point. So I don't like people missing events and dodging certain things to protect a number that I don't particularly respect. I don't respect the algorithm, not in terms of its inherent reliability.
I disagree. I have to jump in here. I think DUPR is close enough. I think you're talking about tenths and hundredths of a point, not even half of a point. I think every one of us is within half of a point of our actual rating. I think anytime I talk to anybody across the country out of our own ecosystem, the first question that gets brought up is, what's your DUPR? How good are you at pickleball? Show me through your DUPR rating. And I'm going to say it is a lot closer than we give it credit for. There's a period in time where for about 2 months I was wildly underrated at, like, I don't know, 4-1 or something like that. It fixed itself, and you know how it fixed itself? Me playing matches and recording them into DUPR. So like the whole DUPR dodging conversation, if you have a low DUPR, I think that's your own fault. You have to go log DUPR matches with people to get it closer to where it should be. Play in tournaments, do those things. But I'm going to give DUPR credit because we talk in our circle about how we feel about it, and I'm going to say I disagree. I think it's a lot closer than what we give it credit for.
Jesse, you've been silent for a while. Why don't you jump in here?
Okay, couple points. First, a question for you, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
So, if DUPR is randomness and meaningless, why are you using DUPR in the men's team event on November 18? Why are we reporting to DUPR, and why did you use it when choosing the order in which the drafts would occur?
Great questions, and I hate to pass the baton on to others, but that was a decision. I'm not solely making all the decisions for our event, and a plurality of our committee liked that idea. I was not in great favor to it. Now I will admit I wasn't in massive opposition to it, but I did not particularly think that was the best way to do it. And that's why we did our draft in DUPR order, right, as terms of our captains, and also had our players with their DUPR rating. And why should the event be DUPR rating? It does add a little bit more seriousness, even if I don't inherently like it or trust the algorithm itself. It does make things more serious. We wanted to bring that air of seriousness to the event. And that's the decision we made on it. Again, it wasn't my sole choice, but people wanted to do it that way. We all agreed we wanted to make it more serious. DUPR was a way to make it more serious. But my position isn't necessarily that. I mean, I have a DUPR score. I'm playing in a DUPR league. I care. I do care what my number is. My point and my biggest, I guess, frustration around this topic is dodging events to protect your DUPR. It's not should you care about your DUPR, should you try to get your DUPR score higher, should you play in these matches, how much credibility should we give DUPR. The original point of this is should you dodge events with your friends that your friends are putting on that you, as a highly skilled player, highly regarded player, would objectively make the event better, both by your talent, by your leadership, by the community aspect. You removing yourself from that situation does bring down the awesomeness of the event to some degree. And so these guys who sparked this conversation in our personal idea, but in the DUPR discussion of DUPR Dodgers, they do denigrate and lower things that they otherwise would promote and elevate. And so it's the hierarchy on the scales. Do you protect your DUPR or do you participate in these things? So the discussion isn't really, do I take DUPR seriously? Should we have the score? It's, is your DUPR worth, or events, tournaments, matches worth dodging to protect that particular number? And I'm not convinced.
Okay, so I would just add a couple of points of context. Number one, in this event, you do not have total control over whom your partner is. So yes, there's a draft, but like if you're not a captain, you don't know who's going to be on your team, and even if you're a captain, you don't have total control over who you're going to pick because it depends on who's available and where you are in that draft order. And so, it's kind of asking a lot of somebody who's a 5'3" and might be paired up with somebody in the low 4s, and then if you lose that game, your 5'3" is going to take a big hit, even though you probably won't see the ball that much. So I can understand some reluctance to play in a DUPR match in that particular situation. And then the second point of context is that there are a number of players, not that many. I think I agree with Stolp. For the most part, I think DUPR has improved, and I would say most of our DUPRs are within a few tenths of where it should be. Yeah. But there are some players whose DUPRs are seriously low, whether it's because of bad data or they're just too new to the game. I'm thinking of Tim Shepard. I'm thinking of Craig Duncan, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And
even Banu is definitely too low. Banu's been making
Yep.
amazing come-ups.
Yep, I think Banu is too low. And so, you're asking somebody who's maybe a 5'3" or a 5'1" to play against Craig Duncan, who's a 4'2", but we all know he's really like a 4'8" or maybe even better. And that's asking a lot, because these people do care about their dupers, and it makes them very vulnerable to play somebody like that.
I want to respond to that, but Tim, I want to give you a chance to jump in if you want to.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. I think that if dupers are inaccurate, I think in most cases it's only temporary, because if a guy is really good, they're going to play their way up to what their duper should be pretty soon anyway. So that's another reason not to be overly concerned about duper. And if you actually are a 5.2 and it comes down for a little bit, it's probably going to go right back up. I think the mistake that a lot of people make when they try so hard to defend their duper, not defend, but protect their duper, is it just does a number on their mentality heading into a match. And I can speak to this personally, because I woke up yesterday, I was a 4.87, which as of yesterday was the highest I had been. I guess it went up since then because it's dynamic. Yeah. But I showed up, I rolled out of bed. I'm like, well, these three guys I'm playing with their dupers are way lower than mine. I should just spend whatever time on the court that I'm going to spend. I'll leave, with a 8-0 record or whatever. And then I'll go to work. It'll be a great day. Well, I got my butt kicked. I got destroyed. Luckily those matches weren't for duper, but if they had been, I would have deserved it. So I think people with high dupers need to avoid the hype. Like, don't buy into your own hype. If you have a high duper, forget about it. Charge in, have a winning mentality, be super competitive, and pretend like dupers aren't even a factor. You're just on the court against two guys that you're trying to beat. Like, it doesn't matter what their dupers are. And I think if you approach matches with that mentality, your duper is going to take care of itself.
I think you're right about that. But what you're saying is, like, I already feel that way about duper. I already don't take it that seriously. I already dismiss it when they go out in the court. Now, and it is very difficult to respond to guys like Stolp who say, well, people pay attention to this thing. People ask you the number. It's like, that is true. And people do judge you. If they're strangers to you, they initially judge you on what your number is. And it's hard not to take that seriously. I still manage not to, also because I play with family members for duper who are much lower than me, which I believe contributes to my lower than what I would, classify myself as duper. But Jesse, going back to kind of what you said, you said is asking a lot for that 5'3" to play with the lower 4 player. And I agree with you. I am asking a lot. And I'm okay asking a lot for someone. Because for me, in the particular example of this tournament, which, again, sparked this conversation, I consider friends and the social aspect of what this thing is higher priority than protecting my number. And I know not everyone feels that way, but this is where I'm coming from. So I came up with a couple scenarios I'll lay at you guys, and you can tell me what you think about it. Let's say I was a 5.25, and some guys at Lifetime who were 4.15s came to me and said, Ian and Tim, and let's say Tim stayed at 4.89 because he just, Tim can't improve. And these two 4.15s come up to Ian and Tim and say, hey, tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., let's play for duper. And we're looking around like, where did you come from? Why are you challenging me? No, I'm not playing you for duper at 5 a.m. when our combined scores are more than 3/4 of a duper point aggregate separated. Ian, would not take on that challenge, nor would I begrudge anyone as a Dodger for not accepting that by having a severely underinflated player try and go get a piece of my duper. I don't owe them anything. high level DUPR players don't owe me anything. I would even go so far as to say the same thing as if 4 5-0 plus players, two guys came to these two other guys and said, "Hey, let's play for DUPR tomorrow at 5 p.m." And the other two guys, the challengees, are like, "What are you talking about? I just want to go play ball. I'm working on a new skill. I want to play some good players and practice these things. I don't want to take this as seriously as I would a competitive match." I don't even consider that dodging. There are certain scenarios that I think, though, trump the DUPR conversation. You can enter a tournament that isn't DUPR rated if you want to play high level but not have an account for DUPR. But there are certain circumstances, and I'm using our men's team example as one of them, in which it should not your DUPR number should not withdraw you from participating in something that's, and let's be honest, it's going to be epic. Like, we're doing this thing well. It's going to be awesome. And I'm just saying, when I look at all those different scenarios, I don't think you should say yes to every DUPR challenge, but there are some that you always should say yes to. And I'm going to stick by this rule. Hopefully I'll be a 5-0 one day, and I will always say yes to certain circumstances. And I guess that's, I don't mean to soften my position, because I'm still, I don't like DUPR dodging, but I guess that's more of a clarification of my position.
Tim, I think you're going to be in an interesting position out of all of us in this foursome here, because you will be a 5.0 by the end of the year. That's my prediction. I think you're there now. And then would you accept a DUPR match between Jesse and I, or Ian and I, and you and Louie? Like, put it in those perspectives. And I think I love your mentality of, bring a winning attitude, do this and that, but you kind of knowing some of the strengths and dangers that we present to a match against, you and Louie, would you accept that? I think you're going to be in a position to where you're going to have to really put your money where your mouth is, because you're going to be a 5.0 real soon.
Because
so
Tim and I are going to win everything in our DUPR league.
That's right.
Ooh.
That's right. So I constantly go back to the, yes, Ian, but put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. How would you really operate if you were a 5.2? Put yourself in their shoes. And Tim, you're going to be the first of us to actually live that.
Yeah. Hopefully you're right, by the way. And hopefully you're right too, Ian, that we conquer everybody in this DUPR league. So I think it's important context, what we're talking about right now, about being on the lower end of these DUPR, not lower, but not quite at the 5.0 level, in the mid to high fours, striving to reach that next plateau, the 5.0, the 5.2 range, and knowing how it feels to be the climber. So I'm going to go on the record right now. Well, first of all, I'm going to say I totally agree with what Ian was saying about the scenario that he presented, about being approached by two guys that are like 4-1s. We challenge you to a DUPR match tomorrow morning. That's ridiculous. That just is. I can't explain exactly why, but that's ridiculous. Like, each scenario presents some different angles that you need to consider. Some are reasonable. Some of these scenarios are reasonable. Some are just absurd. That's an absurd situation that I'm like, no, I'm not going to play for DUPR. I don't even know who you are. But why don't you guys go play with those guys on court 4? I hear they're like 4-3s or 4-4s. That makes sense for you guys. I do think there's a reasonable gap between the competitors that should be understood prior to making like a DUPR challenge. I think it's about like 0.3 or 0.4. I think that's reasonable.
As in, you should probably say yes to those?
Yes, I think you should say yes to those. I think that's reasonable. And I will absolutely say yes to all those, because I want to believe that I am what my DUPR says I am. And I'm going to take those matches and those challenges very, very seriously, because I don't want to be a fraud. I want to be what DUPR says I am. And even if I should lose that match, good on you. I'm going to challenge you to a rematch to prove that no, I am the better player. And my DUPR will end up reflecting that. But I just want you to know I'm still above you in these ladder rankings that exist in my own head. So I'm not going to turn that challenge down.
Yeah, I would probably turn it down, and it's not that I'm scared. It's that I'm already playing in the DUPR League. I'm already playing in this men's event, and I'm going to play, many tournaments over the course of the year. So anybody who wants to come at me, you come at me then. But I'm not here to I kind of plan out my mornings. I can only play hard a certain number of times per week. Maybe that number is like 3 times per week. So I'm not going to let other people take a third of my time on the courts. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to play who I want to play.
Yep.
And yeah, that's fair context. And that's fair context. I was speaking in generalities without any kind of context of the DUPR League or this men's event that's coming up. I'm just saying my philosophy is to not run away from a fight.
For sure. Tim, you do every DUPR League. You do men's, you do singles, sometimes you do mixed. You do all these tournaments, you're doing the men's event. I mean, you're always in there scrapping. You've never shied away from a DUPR match. So I know, and I know you'll continue. That'll still be true even when you're above 5. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. You put your paddle behind your words. You win a lot, bro.
Yeah. I think, though, like the 5.0 threshold puts a target on your back. You're like the dude in the bar who is super jacked and works out all the time, and some guy who thinks he can box and fight. He wants to fight you. Like you're the big guy at the bar that is going to get fights. You're going to get challengers. I think if you are a 5.0, and yes, I agree with Jesse. It's the tournaments. It's the DUPR leagues. But the second you get that 5.0, Tim, you put a target on your back that says, oh my gosh, I can hang, I want to challenge, and I'm going to go after it. And guys like you will say yes. And I'm just saying that guys, I can feel and defend why they would say no. And then publicly want to go on the record and say, the second you do hit 5, I want a piece of that. I want to come at you. I want to be your first match on the DUPR log against you at 5.0. So I want to put that out there too.
Awesome. And Tim, I love how you said every scenario should probably be evaluated as that scenario. And different people, by the way, view different scenarios differently. We've had these mornings at Lifetime where we get 12, 4, 8, 12, 8 guys, 12 guys. One time we got 16 guys. Math was hard there for a second. And if there was one of those mornings where the collective group goes, hey, let's make this a real morning. Let's put DUPR on the line. And I was a 5.0, I think I would at least think a little bit longer if I would participate in that, because I don't know who I will be playing with in that scenario. And if I'm just over 5, maybe I would drop below. Now I do think I would end up playing in that and be of the mentality, if I'm actually a 5.0, I should win all my matches. Maybe I'll go, how many do we mark? 6 matches? I should go 5-1, right? I should be able to pull this off. So, but I definitely agree. Every scenario should be judged as its scenario. But I guess my threshold for what I would play in is a pretty strict rule. As Jesse said, I am asking a lot, but I also hold myself to a lot. So, I don't know, that kind of comes around to whether you're a Dodger or not. Some people might say that the 4-1s challenging Tim and Louie to Lifetime at 5 a.m., that they're dodging it. And I guess definitionally you are dodging it, right? Because you're not going to be playing in that match. But should you be denigrated for it? I'm not convinced. So we're running up here on time. And there were a couple of other things I wanted to bring up, but I kind of want to close it, the DUPR seriousness with this idea. And Jesse shared this. I don't know if you and Stolp, if you and Tim saw this, but I believe, was it Dane Gingrich who put this out, Jess? The "you can't go pro anymore" thing?
Yeah.
So I genuinely had aspirations of thinking I could make it to a week low pro level, but like actually become a pro. I thought maybe I could pull it off. Pickleball has evolved and grown to the point where I will never accomplish it. I'm not physically gifted enough. I didn't grow up playing the right sports. I have a family. I don't have the current time to devote to becoming a pro. There are people. I mean, Jack Sock just signed with Selkirk, and he's like a specimen of a human being, the most elite of the. I mean, he's sculpt size and 3 times the athlete. Like that's insane, right?
Whoa,
And so,
whoa, whoa. That's
all right,
insane.
sorry, 2.7 times the athlete. And so, like, the pickleball is changing right before our eyes, where the 4 of us will only ever be very good, normal people. We will never go pro. We'll probably never go semi-pro. And I think that people are going to start to realize that they're now locked out of the system. You can't pay to play anymore. Just because you can afford the flight and the $600 entry fee, you're no longer just contributing to Ben Johns' trophy check, right? Like the game has changed, and I think people are going to be starting to take themselves a lot less seriously because now there are 2 classes of people. There are the people who are legitimate pros. Like I'll never be in the NBA. Excuse me. I'll never be in the NBA. I'm not 6'5". I'm not 6'7". You know, it just won't happen. No matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I train. And so part of the reason I've kind of known this for a little while, but Dane Gingrich came out and made it publicly, basically put the pickleball world on blast and said, "Get real, you guys it's over." And I appreciated his hard, honest truth. And so that's kind of the reason I also don't take DUPR so seriously. I can either ball out or I can't. I can either hit a drop on you or I can't. Who cares what a number says? So
Yeah, just to clarify, so Dane Gingrich wasn't saying like Ian, you will never play at the pro level, or you guys, Tim and Stolp, you will never make it to the pro level. I think he's talking about kind of the top tier, the people getting contracts, the people who are actually winning consistently at the pro level, and he's saying to get there, the game has changed because it used to be there were people who worked their way up from 3.5 to 4.0 to 4.5, and they made it.
We
to the pro
highlighted
level.
someone on our last show, right?
Right.
I forget her name.
Yeah, but she's like, I don't know if she's like a top. I don't know how good she is, but her DUPR is like 4.8, for what that's worth. But he's talking about people who are actually getting those contracts,
Making a living doing
making a living, right?
Okay. Well, hey, if I can ever get into a PPA tour bracket one day, I'll jump on that opportunity. I think those days are behind us. I really
No,
do.
to play, I don't think it is. I think I could see any of you doing that.
Well, I would also.
It doesn't mean you're going to win. It doesn't mean you're going to medal. But I think you can get in there and like some of the guys we know, like Eric Fritzge's held his own against. Well, I think he beat Colin Schick in a doubles game and scored 7 points against Matt Wright and somebody.
Dylan Frazier.
Yeah. So I'm not saying you guys are as good as him, but don't you think it's possible someday you might be?
It's possible. It is. All right, guys. That about wraps up our show here. Any final comments? No.
Take your vitamins, drink your water, take care, brush your hair, get well.
Dude, you've missed way too much court time, Stolp. You've got to heal up, bro.
I'm on the mend. I'll be back. Don't worry.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the PickleBros podcast. Please share the podcast around. Please know that if you are a DUPR Dodger, we're not coming at you. It's just authentic, real, difficult conversations that we have with each other all the time. We're bringing it to you guys because you guys need the truth and you need honesty. So subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We love you all. Stay safe and stay out of the kitchen.